I thought I would use some 500 Magnum cases to make a custom fidget spinner. When I bought one of these things for my daughter, I bought a second one for myself. Spinning this thing is supposed to be relaxing. The finger buttons popped off of the center bearing pretty easily. I used a socket and a piece of PVC tube to knock out the bearing. I used carbon paper to transfer my paper layout onto a piece of cherry wood. You can get the carbon paper at the craft store. So here's my plan. 6 500 Magnum case heads, 3 per side. I drilled the holes for the bearing in the cases on the drill press. I had to open up the drilled holes slightly. I used sandpaper wrapped around a piece of dowel. Once I had the holes sized correctly, I used my jigsaw to cut out the rough shape. If I had a scroll saw or a bandsaw, I could have probably cut a lot closer to the lines. I used my Dremel with a sanding bit to finish removing material. The black tube you see is my vacuum. Now this thing is starting to look like my paper layout. I used my Dremel and a cutoff wheel to trim down the brass cases. Here's the cases cut down. I used my powder scale and a grinding bit on the Dremel to get the cases very close to equal weight to keep the spinner as balanced as possible. I fit the pieces together for a test spin. My next step was to make the finger buttons. I used the carbon paper to transfer my layout onto the cherry wood. I used the jigsaw to cut out the rough shape. Then I worked on the buttons with the Dremel. I used a wood carving knife for the finer shaping. Here's the buttons after carving. I cleaned up the brass case heads with superfine steel wool and then polished them with emery compound and my Dremel. I worked through several grades of sandpaper to get the spinner body smooth and rounded. I did the same with the finger buttons. So here's all the parts ready to assemble. I used clear 2-part epoxy to glue in the bearing and the cases. I used a flat washer to help keep the bearing centered in the body while the epoxy cured. So here's the spinner with all the parts glued in place. I used boiled linseed oil to finish the cherry. I think cherry looks really nice with a classic oil finish. So here's the finished product. Those 500 mag shells going round and round is pretty relaxing. Thanks for watching.